Hey, mate.
Tell came off at time last night. Is he struggling a bit at the moment?
No, look, the reason I took him off, I just thought we needed a spark, we needed something. I just felt like I said, it wasn't about him, because it wasn't about, I could have taken off any one of a number of players. It's just that I felt like we needed something to change the course of events. Look, he came in a really tricky time for us in that I think it's different if he had been playing regularly and sort of jumped in, but, he's kind of been trying to build up his fitness, but at the same time we've been putting him out there pretty regularly because of our lack of options. And still a young man. He's it's a different league. There's different demands on it, and certainly at the moment we're not sort of in our best moment like last night where he's going to get loads of chances. But I think again, working with him since he's come here, he's got a really strong head on his shoulders. He even last night, as disappointed as he was to come off, it didn't seem to affect him in terms of his, mental kind of aptitude to deal with it and get on with it and try and make an impact in the best way he can. But it's fair to say we've put a lot on a very young player, introduced into our league. And but I remember, look, Lucas was a kind of similar one at the beginning of the year. He struggled a little bit with certain games, especially in Europe. He struggled a couple of times, but over time you've seen him sort of flourish. And I'm sure once we can get Dom back in and hopefully Richie not too far in the future, that we can sort of use him in the way we want to.
Completely accept that. We shouldn't rush to judge young players. But isn't the nature of signing players in January in the situation Tottenham being in, that you need players who can make an immediate impact? Yeah,
I think that's a fair assessment. But at the same time, I think, we got a point in that window where, there was a decision to be made whether we kind of passed up an opportunity to sign an exciting young player and go without. That was the reality of it. Or, we commit to bringing another young talented player to the football club. I said he hasn't made the impact that, he probably wanted to. But again, I think the circumstances of where we're at, I think it would be unfair to put that on his shoulders. I think he's done as well as he possibly can. I'm sure even between now and the end of the year, people will see him, and realise, what a talent he is. And my job is to make sure that we, protect him through that.
And just finally, are you confident centre forward is his best position, or could we see elsewhere when Solanke's?
Yeah, no. Initially, I think my view was that he'll probably play in a wide area for us once Solanke was back. So I'm keen to try him out there. I think the first game he played out wide on the left, and you can see that he's really comfortable there, or out wide on the right. So I think he'll get more opportunities there. Thanks, mate.
Tom.
Ange, is there a sort of concern for you that this team doesn't feel like sort of delivering when it really matters in the kind of big game?
Look, if we were kind of in a position where I felt we were well placed to do that, then yes, but we were still missing significant key players last night, and the likes of, it's easy to kind of forget, but the likes of Van der Ven, Romero, Solanke, make an enormous difference to us in just the way we play and with their mindset and with their physicality and with their experience. As I said, we were still very young last night. We're still a very young team. And last night I felt it was a game where we needed to sort of really be strong in certain aspects of the game. And those kind of guys would help us. So, if they were available and we performed like we did last night, then, I'd be questioning it. But, there have been games we have delivered. But last night certainly wasn't near the level it needs to be for us to win those kind of games.
You think lag then, you think, even when players are back, that they're going to need a bit of time to get
We don't have lag. Look, the reality of it is, like, we where we are right now, we don't have time for all these things for this season anyway. Is that, I said, look, the tie isn't over. I get last night was disappointing. No one's as disappointed as I am about it. But come Monday morning, we got 4 days to prepare for a game where we're 1-0 down with a home game to come, and I think that's where our mindset should be. But before then, I really think it's important that we play well. And get a result against Bournemouth. I think we still need to move up the table. We can't be dismissive of that. Like I said, our league form, we've won 3 of the last 4, and we need to stay on that kind of trajectory because I think it's important for the club, it's important for these players. But certainly getting those kind of players back, I think, will help us enormously in dealing with sort of some of the situations we had last night.
I think a lot of people would agree that the tie is clearly not over, but also people would probably look at that match and say, can't really see this Spurs team beating good European teams in the next 3 or 4 rounds to win the tournament.
Yeah, well, I guess that's an assessment people can make, because, like I said, they'll always pick a point in time to make that assessment. If you make that assessment, after some of the other games we played, well, I know we lost against City, but in the second half, if we play like that, I don't think there are many teams that will be able to stop us. But kind of be relevant. I think people will make their assumptions on what happened last night and kind of take that as a reference point. Again, from my perspective, what's important is we get a little bit more consistent in the way we approach things. And I firmly believe that when we play our best football, as we have at times this year, we don't need to fear anyone.
Just in the pitch thing with Van der Ven and Romero, does that kind of give that sort of fine margin that kind of suggests maybe they're not quite ready? I'm not a doctor.
No, you're not, mate. No, you're not. So, neither am I. Well, no, not really. I think anyone who hasn't played, it's got nothing to do with resilience. Anyone who hasn't played for the amount of time they have in the position they have, it just didn't make sense for us to kind of. And it wasn't that kind of game where, we needed central defenders. We were trying to score goals. So in my mind, there was no point. So, look, I get the whole medical thing's obviously been an issue for us this year, and everyone's sort of questioning every decision I make. But with the greatest respect, everyone here and everyone in the outside world probably has 5% of the information I do. So, if people think that I'm just going out there and not making decisions on just what I feel, my gut, then I don't think I understand the position I am and the information I have. I have all the information, and I'm sure if I shared all the information with you, which I can't because of various reasons, you might sit back and say, okay, totally understand that, but also understand that people are going to question everything I do at the moment, every decision I make that against the prism of, that I don't know what I'm doing.
Those two, possibly for the second leg, you think?
Oh, I'd say so, for sure, yeah. Maybe even Sunday, we'll see how things go.
And Don this weekend?
I'll just see, mate. I haven't seen him. Like I said, it's a knock, so it just depends how he settles down over the next sort of 24 hours. And, hopefully it's not too bad.
Thank you. Dom.
And on the topic of continuing to climb up the table, which you say you'd like your team to continue as a priority, it's still the case that you've scored 20 goals more than a lot of the teams in and around you. Why do you think it is that there has been that disparity this season between, it's sometimes felt that if you're not thrashing a team, then you drop in points. Why do you think that is? Consistency?
Yeah, look, like I said, some of that is just due to the sort of situation we're in terms of, the issues we had around our squad. But I think just about every game we've lost this year, we've lost by a single goal. And we're just, like I said, we found it really hard to get results out of games. Even in the league, there's a number of those games we've lost way too many games this year. If they were, draws, we'd be probably in a pretty decent spot in the league. But like I said, we've either, played teams off the park and won really convincingly, or we've lost. There hasn't been any middle ground, and you need middle ground for consistency. And that was evident again last night. That was a game which, as poor as we were, we still shouldn't have lost if we, if our mindset was right. You get away with a draw and come back with a different scenario, and that's been the case in the league many times this year. So that's part of our issue. Like I said, some of it can be explained by our squad situation, but some of it is also just about our approach and our ability to get something out of a game that's not going our way.
As well as saying that last night was a wake-up call, Son said that next week's second leg will become the biggest game of the season. Do you agree with that?
Biggest game of the season is Sunday first, but I know where Sonny's coming from. Obviously, look, we want to continue in the competition. We have to win it. So we have to win on Thursday night. If we don't, then we're out. And in that context, it's the only sort of competition left for us to try and win something. Yeah, it's definitely the biggest game, but I'm going to make sure that none of them are thinking about that. I'm not going to make sure today that they're all thinking about Sunday, because really Sunday is really important for us.
And John, please.
Last time you played Bournemouth, you had a bit of an exchange of views with the fans. You come round to...
Did I? No.
They were...
When you went over to the away end.
Oh, okay. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, mate. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
You said you would take it on board. And last night we had the goalkeeper having exchange with...
No, but...
What can you do, or do you not feel you have to do anything to get...
Yeah, but like I said before, like, Vic's, he's just so passionate. He just wants everyone to push on and try and get something. I mean, I don't know what people want. Do they just want robots that just sort of stand there and, clap and walk off? And, I mean, we're all human beings. Like, whether it's me, whether it's a player, whether it's the fans, there's emotion after the game. You understand that. There's sometimes that is not positive, and you kind of want to deal with it in the right way. But they're human beings, mate. And I don't get this kind of narrative that there's all of a sudden an issue. If anyone doubts Vicario's commitment to this football club or his passion, mate, watch the bit they did on him coming back from injury. I mean, that guy did everything in his power to get us back as quickly as possible. Why? Because he cares. He cared last night. He cares this morning. He's a wonderful asset for this football club. And, if people think that he was trying to do anything but something that he hopes will help push this football club onwards, then I think they're just trying to find stories for the sake of it.
I think most fans do like players with passion. Maybe that's what we can do with more of that. More people like.
But why would a player do that if negative stuff are coming out? They're going to look at what's being said now about Vicario, which I haven't seen, but obviously there's some negative aspect to it. The next player would go, actually, no, you know what, I'm just going to clap and walk off quietly into, because we don't. Do we want it or don't we want it? That's the question, because as soon as a player shows emotion, it's like, okay, how can we put a negative spin on that? Oh, there's a problem between Vicario and the fans, or Vicario this or Vicario that. And, you're going, well, if I was a player, I'd be going, well, I don't want any of that. I'll just slinker off down the touch line and into the tunnel, and then no one will say anything. So,
is it because it's post-match and everybody's emotional?
I reckon that's it.
Emotional.
Well,
you're one person, really, aren't you, after a match?
Well, yeah. Well, I think we all are, aren't we? I mean, I'm sure you're passionate about something. I mean, if you write a crappy article and, at the end of it you go, I got that totally wrong, and I came up to you straight afterwards and said, how you feeling? You're okay? And that was a terrible article. You go, yeah, no, it wasn't great. No, I reckon you'd react in the same way. Like I said, we forget sometimes we're all human beings, and I will always, people will be never in any doubt about how I feel. I just think, what's the point of hiding? And some people won't like it, other people will. It's just, but you've got to be yourself, and that's all Vic was doing last night, was showing people who he is, because what he showed out there is what he showed in the dressing room. It's what he shows every day at training. He loses a game in training, he's not happy. So, that's just who he is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.